Hello, everybody. Welcome to Brandon's Haunted Library, where horror never takes a vacation. My name is Brandon, your undead librarian, and while a lot of readers look for beach reads and breezy romances in the summer months, I'm always searching for a good scare. And in this video, I want to share with you some horror books that feel tailor-made for summer. Books perfect for hot summer nights or weekends by the pool. I'll also be going through my own summer TBR to show you some of the books that I'm hoping to read this summer. So all my fellow sickos out there looking for some scary and bloody books to read this summer, stick around, and if you like, let me know in the comments what you want to read this summer. I love hearing from you, and I always reply back. Now let's get to it, starting with my recommendations before I share with you my TBR. Starting with the most recently published book, released in April this year, Staircase in the Woods by Chuck Wendig is set against the backdrop of a teenage camping trip gone wrong. The story follows 5 friends who discover a staircase in the forest, and that night one of them climbs it and vanishes. That single moment defines them and the group is left shattered. 20 years later, the staircase returns, and so does the guilt, grief, and trauma that they've spent their adulthood lives trying to forget. This is a dual timeline novel that jumps between the night of the disappearance and the friends' uneasy reunion 2 decades later. It's packed with disturbing imagery and brutal body horror, but also deeply emotional character work. The story leans into themes of trauma and guilt, but also the intensity of childhood friendships and the way that those bonds are tested under pressure. The friendship between them isn't warm and fuzzy, it's complicated, fractured, and deeply human, which adds a lot of emotional depth. The group dynamic becomes the emotional driver of the novel, and watching these broken relationships try to hold under the weight of something supernatural and evil is harrowing as the horror itself. But this certainly doesn't shy away from the gruesome. This book goes to some dark, disturbing places, with scenes of body horror and surreal imagery that linger long after the final page. The horror is vivid and brutal, with a creeping atmosphere that makes even the quiet moments feel uneasy. As a summer read, it absolutely works. It opens in the woods during a sweltering camping trip, making it a perfect read if you have your own camping trip planned this summer. If you're into supernatural horror with heart, this is worth the climb. Next up is a horror classic from 1981, Cujo by Stephen King. Set in the fictional town of Castle Rock, Maine, Cujo is one of those iconic stories where the title alone conjures fear. And while the basic premise is well known, a massive St. Bernard contracts rabies and traps the mother and her young son in a sweltering car, there's so much more to this novel than just the dog. Beneath the horror, Cujo is an incredibly well-crafted domestic drama. The first half of the novel is spent building out the community of Castle Rock, filled with complex, flawed characters, dealing with infidelity, failing marriages, and quiet resentment. The emotional groundwork laid early in the novel makes the second half hit even harder. When the horror arrives, it feels earned and it feels real. There are no supernatural forces at play here. The terror is grounded in reality, which for me is where King really shines. The true horror in Cujo isn't the dog, it's chance, disease, timing, and the cruel ways everyday life can spiral into nightmares. It's the kind of horror that sticks with readers because it could actually happen. What makes this such a brutal summer read is its setting. The bulk of the novel plays out in a baking hot car with rising temperatures, limited air, and no escape. It's suffocating. You feel the sweat and dehydration, every second ticking by as things get worse. It's unbearably tense, and it's written as one long continuous chapter, making it difficult to put down. We even get moments from Cujo's perspective, which adds a heartbreaking layer to the story. He's not a monster, he's a good dog, slowly losing himself to his disease he can't fight. It's genuinely tragic to read, especially if you're a dog lover. This is a tough book, especially if you're sensitive to stories involving animals or children in peril, but one that I highly recommend for summer months. Next up is another classic, The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, the prototype of modern haunted house stories. The story follows Eleanor, a lonely woman who agrees to join a small group investigating and spending the summer at the supposedly haunted Hill House, a sprawling, decaying mansion with a sinister reputation. Over the course of their stay, strange events begin to unfold, and Eleanor slowly becomes entangled in the house's grip. This is a subtle and atmospheric novel that's equal parts supernatural and psychological, and features some truly incredible prose. At its core, to me, this is a story about loneliness. Eleanor's emotional fragility is the true center of the novel, and her desire to belong makes her time in the house all the more heartbreaking. The line between psychological breakdown and supernatural possession is deliberately blurry, and that ambiguity is what makes this novel so great. And yes, this is actually a summer horror novel. The group arrives at Hill House in early summer, with the plans to spend the season investigating the property. If you're looking for horror that's quiet, thoughtful, and deeply unsettling, The Haunting of Hill House is a perfect summer read. It has been many years since I've read it, but I consider it one of my favorite books. I am definitely due for a reread. My next summer recommendation is I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. For some reason, for me, the slasher genre just seems perfect for the hot summer days. And if you're familiar with Stephen Graham Jones' work, you know that he loves the slasher genre. He's been exploring it in depth since My Heart is a Chainsaw launched the Indian Lake trilogy, and this standalone novel feels like a companion piece to that series, but with its own distinct voice and emotional core. Told as a fictional memoir, the story follows Tully Driver, who confesses to killing several of his classmates in the summer of 1989. Right away, this sounds like classic slasher territory, but what makes this novel so powerful is how deeply personal it feels. Tully is raw, funny, and painfully human, and despite his actions, you genuinely empathize with him. Stephen Graham Jones writes him with such care and complexity that you're pulled into his mind, whether or not you want to be there or not. The prose is sharp, fast, and intentionally messy. Stream of consciousness in a way that might not work for every reader, but it captures the chaos of memory, especially when looking back at traumatic events. As a summer read, this is perfect. It's set in the Texas summer heat that you can really feel. The book balances brutal gore with humor and heart. And while it absolutely delivers on the slasher violence, it's also deeply introspective. Another great horror read I recommend you check out this summer. Next up is The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas, a gothic horror novel set in the aftermath of the Mexican War of Independence. The story follows Beatriz, a young woman looking for stability after the political upheaval of the war, leaving her and her family in ruin. She marries into what she hopes will become a secure future, but her new husband's remote estate quickly reveals itself to be something far more sinister. The hacienda is haunted, or at least Beatrice becomes convinced it is, as disturbing occurrences begin to unfold. She enlists the help of Padre Andres, a young priest with a mysterious past and a spiritual sensitivity that connects him to the supernatural. Their partnership is one of the novel's strengths. There's romantic tension, yes, but more than that, there's a real emotional bond between them. You root for them both as individuals and as a team, especially as the haunting grows more dangerous. Similar to The Haunting of Hill House, the setting of the hacienda feels alive in the worst possible way, with rich, immersive prose that captures both its beauty and its horror. The story builds a sense of creeping dread, more eerie and unsettling than outright terrifying. As a summer read, it's ideal. The heat and isolation and the feeling of being trapped in a decaying estate under the blistering sun all adds to that tension. A perfect read for a hot summer night. Next is House of Bone and Rain by Gabino Iglesias, a supernatural coming-of-age horror novel set in Puerto Rico during the height of hurricane season. This is a story that follows 5 teenage boys whose lives are torn apart when one of their mothers is murdered in an act of gang violence. Devastated and furious, they band together to find out who's responsible, navigating the criminal underworld as a massive hurricane approaches the island. But in their culture, hurricanes don't just bring wind and destruction, they also carry evil spirits ashore with them. As the storm intensifies, so does the sense of dread, and the story slips seamlessly from gritty crime drama into full-blown supernatural horror. This novel has a perfect storm of elements: intense emotional stakes, brutal violence, and a vivid setting. The hurricane isn't just background noise, it shapes the entire atmosphere of the book, and Iglesias' writing brings the chaos and destruction to life in a way that's both terrifying and beautiful. His prose is lush and lyrical, even when describing the most violent and unsettling scenes. It's also deeply character-driven. These boys feel real, raw, vulnerable, and full of rage. Their bond and their grief drives the story forward, and you can't help but root for them even as the lines between justice and vengeance start to blur. This is a perfect summer read because it captures the energy and danger of a tropical storm, both literal and emotional, making this an ideal pick for a stormy summer night. So those are all my recommendations, but I also want to share a few horror books that I hope to read this summer. Moving into my summer TBR, first up is Camp Damascus by Chuck Tingle. Welcome to Neverton, Montana, home to God-fearing community with a heart of gold. Nestled high up in the mountains is Camp Damascus, the self-proclaimed most effective gay conversion camp in the country. Here, a life free of sin awaits, but the secret behind that success is anything but holy. This was the debut novel for Chuck Tingle. I've already read Tingle's Bury Your Gaze and was really impressed by how he balances satire and genuine horror. So I'm excited to see how he tackles the interesting concept in this one and how it addresses themes of queerness, repression, and religious trauma. And I thought this would be a great pick for June since it's Pride Month, and Camp Damascus is a queer horror novel that directly confronts the damage caused by some American church communities. Plus, the eerie summer camp setting feels like a perfect match for summer horror season. Next on my TBR is Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. This one has been on my radar for a while now, and I've heard incredible things about Julia Armfield's writing. The story follows Miri and Leah, a married couple whose relationship is shaken when Leah, after months lost on a mysterious deep-sea expedition, finally returns home. But something about her has changed. Miri is desperate to reconnect, but Leah is quiet, distant, and increasingly strange in ways that suggest something followed her back from the deep. As a summer pick, this one makes sense to me because of the oceanic setting. Sounds like a great book to take to the beach, or even better on a boat trip. Next up is Hurricane Season by Fernanda Melchor. This one has been on my shelf for a while and I've been saving it for the right time, and summer feels like the perfect season for it. The novel opens with the discovery of a murdered body, the local witch of a small Mexican village, and unfolds in a series of chapters from different perspectives, slowly revealing the town's violence, secrets, and desperation. It's not a traditional horror novel, but from everything I've heard, it's filled with real-world horror, poverty, misogyny, corruption, and told in a style that's meant to feel suffocating and overwhelming. As a summer read, I'm really looking forward to reading this one. Last on my TBR is The Troop by Nick Cutter. I've been recommended Nick Cutter multiple times, and I've been meaning to get to it forever. I figured summer was the perfect time to finally pick this one up. It's set on a remote island during a boys' camping trip, which definitely screams summer horror to me. The story follows a group of teenage boys and their scoutmaster as they head to a deserted island for a weekend wilderness retreat. A mysterious man stumbles into their camp, the human carrier of a bioengineered nightmare, an inexplicable horror that spreads faster than fear, a harrowing struggle for survival that will pit the troops against the elements, the infected, and one another. I've been told that The Troop is not for the faint of heart, and honestly that just makes me want to read it more. But that's all that I have for you all. Thank you so much for joining me for the roundup of summer horror reads and my personal TBR. Whether you're headed out camping, lounging by the pool, or looking to dive into some dark stories during these hot summer nights, I hope you found something in here that sparks your interest. If you've read any of these or plan to, let me know your thoughts because I love hearing what other horror lovers are reading. And if you have recommendations for me, definitely drop them in the comments. Here's to a summer full of scares. Happy reading, everybody.